Florida State had a huge recruiting weekend this weekend with several talented prospects on campus, both from the high school and transfer ranks. We're going to talk with Zach Blostein of Noles 247 about all of it and get all your questions answered next. Hey guys, just before I bring Zach on, I want to give a quick shout out to The Gramco. thegramco.com, TJ25 at checkout for 25% off. Delta 8 gummies, pre-rolls, vapes, wake and bake coffee, pre-mix, whatever you need, they will get you taken care of. thegramco.com, the leaders in Delta 8 gummies and more. TJ25 at thegramco.com. All right, I am joined by Zach Blostein of Noles 247. Florida State had a big recruiting weekend this weekend, a lot of visits, and another one coming up. Zach, how you doing, man? You get any sleep?
Barely, but I'm still chugging along. It's been a lot of fun. If you've been on Noles 24/7 the past week, you know how crazy it's been. So definitely having a lot of fun. I think it's only going to get more crazy down the stretch as we lead into signing day.
What was the mood on campus this weekend? Obviously, the guys are getting ready for the Cheez-It Bowl against Oklahoma, and a lot of visitors on campus as well. So was it just kind of chaos up there?
Yeah, it was chaos. A lot of energy, surprisingly. I don't know how Mike Norvell continues to have energy. He's the most impressive human being I've ever seen when it comes to just being energetic all the time. He was literally on the road. I believe he hit 13 states last week on the recruiting trail. And he comes in, immediately lands on Friday, and brings the energy right away, introduces and every official visitor that was on campus that we'll talk about in a second, and just kind of brings the energy right away. It's crazy, but there was a good energy around campus, especially at practice. A lot of guys flying around. I was told, I talked to someone yesterday who thought, Florida State's had some really nice practices. The last three, they felt have gone really well for FSU, which is surprising, right? Because we're in bowl season. Some guys, might think, or some people might think that FSU would take these practices for granted, but they're not. They haven't had this luxury in years, as we know. They haven't, been to a bowl in a few years. So getting these 15 practices, Mike Norvell is stressing a ton that he wants his players to get the most out of these practices, and we've seen that so far through the few we've been able to observe.
Yeah, it is pretty neat to kind of watch that turnaround and how. I think even the fan base is kind of just taking it for it's just a ball game. But
Yeah.
The buy-in there is pretty impressive. All right, let's run kind of through some rapid fire stuff. Again, most of this information on Noles 247. You guys should go subscribe for sure. They're always running deals and always have good stuff going on over there. Noles247.com. But we'll jump into it. Let's talk about tight ends. Kyle Morlock, Jaheim Bell, both visited this weekend. Can you just tell us a little bit about those and what your thoughts or feelings are? Florida State's not had a dominant tight end in almost a decade at this point.
Yeah, you're right. Their last dominant tight end might have been on campus this weekend too, with Nick O'Leary being there on Friday, spending some time around the staff and the recruits. I thought that was pretty cool and a cool choice to have him there with the two tight ends, like you mentioned, on campus. FSU has a chance to completely flip their tight end room. Obviously, we kind of joked over the past year or two that FSU keeps adding tight ends, but are there any real difference makers in that room? I think right now you have the opportunity. FSU has the chance to add some difference makers. Let's start with Jaheim Bell, the South Carolina tight end transfer, the number 4 overall transfer in the 24/7 Sports transfer portal rankings. The number 1 tight end within those rankings was on campus for an official visit. That comes on the heels of him being visited in home by Mike Norvell at his house or at his place in South Carolina on Thursday. Makes the trip over to FSU the next day to go spend some quality time and get some face-to-face time around Norvell and the rest of the staff. I think the visit went extremely well. Obviously, we'll talk a little bit about what happened yesterday, but I was told he absolutely loved watching FSU practice. That's not something you have the luxury of maybe at a school down in Coral Gables right now, but That's something that FSU can sell to recruits, right? Like, yo, you're here, you're taking an official visit. You can go. He watched 2 of FSU's practices. One was inside Doak Campbell Stadium on Friday, and then on Saturday he just watched the traditional practice inside the IPF and on the practice fields. I was told it only took him a few periods of practice to be pretty much, sold on what Mike Norvell is doing in Tallahassee. He felt really good about, how FSU runs practice, the quality of player on the roster, and just about his fit within Norvell's scheme. I gave out this comparison yesterday on OTB, but I think a guy that you could kind of compare him to, that Norvell has used before, is Memphis's tight end Sean Dykes, former tight end there that was there under Norvell, who put up pretty crazy production. In his career, he had 128 catches for over 1,800 yards and 19 touchdowns. So obviously that'd be a stat line that FSU would love to accomplish with Jaheim Bell, and I think they have the opportunity to do so. I think he's a guy that they want to, if they were to add, they'd want to get a bunch of offensive snaps every game, maybe close to 15 or more. And I think Jaheim Bell is a really talented player. As far as his decision and what's the latest, I think FSU sits as his leader right now. He hasn't come out and said that, obviously, because he hasn't been on record in any interview. After the visit, wanted to keep things low key. Perfectly fine by us. But what I'm hearing is that FSU sits in a really good spot, and I do not expect him to take it much longer before he makes a decision, makes a commitment to a program. And I think if he does, especially within the near future, I think it'll be FSU.
Yeah. Can Florida State pick up 2 tight ends in this transfer cycle? Are they pushing hard, or is it kind of a one or the other situation?
No, they definitely would prefer, with Jaheim Bell and Kyle Morlock specifically, to get both of them. What if you throw other tight ends in the mix? They're obviously talking to some other ones in the transfer portal right now, but those are their 2 priorities, and they would be more than glad to add both, not just one. Talking a little bit more about Kyle Morlock, I think he had a great visit to FSU as well. Was there with his dad, and I think the main competition is Tennessee. And what's working in FSU's favor is that Tennessee just lost their OC and tight ends coach. He did both for them to be the head coach at USF, and Alex Galesh. So I think that works out pretty well for FSU. He says he's going to take official visits to Illinois, Auburn, and Tennessee this week before he makes a decision. I think the main one to look at is Tennessee there. We'll see if he takes all 3 official visits. That'd obviously be a lot of traveling for him and his family. But I think FSU, regardless of where he visits, sits in a really good spot. He said he spoke with Jordan Travis on the visit, and Jordan kind of was laying it out how FSU wants to use Morlock in the offense, how they want to ideally use a tight end like him. He explained he's more of a receiving threat and a guy that they want to use like all across the line of scrimmage. So definitely would be an interesting fit in Mike Norvell's offense. They haven't had a tight end of that stature, since he's been here. So definitely would be interested to see him and Jaheim Bell being used in this offense. But yeah, as far as a timeline, I think within the next 2 weeks is reasonable. That's kind of what he laid out in his interview, but based on what I'm hearing, I think probably not this week, but next week is when he makes a decision. And I think, if things were to end today, I would like FSU to get his commitment. But obviously he says he wants to take some more visits before deciding. So, we'll see where that one pans out, but I think FSU sits in a really good spot.
Another transfer that was on campus this weekend, Jeremiah Byers, offensive tackle from UTEP. Thoughts around his recruitment, where FSU stands there?
Yeah, I think FSU sits in a really good spot with him as well. He, like you saw on Noles 24/7, left Sunday morning to go on an official visit to Maryland for the latter portion of the weekend. I think he might still be there. I'm told that he could take maybe one more big visit, is what I described. I'm not sure, where that place is as of right now. I know Oklahoma recently offered, Oregon recently offered. So there's a couple big name schools that are still in the mix with Byers, and he does want to do his due diligence and take some visits and make sure that, wherever he's picking is the right choice, and he's had other schools to compare it to. I think FSU set themselves up really well on the visit. He loved spending time with Alex Atkins, the guy that is really charismatic. And Byers is kind of built the same way, from what I understand, in our interactions with him. Really funny dude. Guy that FSU would love to add as an interior offensive lineman, most likely. A guy that's probably around 6'4", over 300 pounds. Really good build. He's really big, so a guy that FSU would absolutely love to add to their offensive line room, and I think they have a good shot of doing that. We'll see what his visit schedule looks like over the next week or so. But he kind of laid out a timeline of he wants to make a decision before or at Christmas Day. So that's kind of the deadline. But I could see him making that before that deadline.
Hopefully before, so he doesn't make you guys work on the Lord's
please.
birthday. All right, this is kind of a 2-for-1 on this one. Devonte Brown and Damari Brown. Devonte Brown, a UCF transfer, and Damari, a recruit from both down there in the South Florida area. People have asked this, and I don't know if you've addressed this question specifically, but people have asked if that's a package deal. Like, what are your thoughts around that recruitment? Would FSU be offering and targeting Devonte no matter what Damari does? And what are your thoughts on both recruitments? So, yeah, there's 6 questions at once.
Yeah. So package deal. I don't think it's a package deal. I think FSU likes Devonte Brown by himself and loves Damari Brown by himself, right? Damari's the high school recruit, the 4-star of American Heritage. Devonte is the UCF defensive back transfer. They would take either or, but obviously the package deal has been discussed by both FSU and the Devonte and Damari Brown. Not something that is all or nothing, like you're going to take both of us or we're not going there. That's not at all what it is. It's just something like, this would be kind of cool if we were able to play together for a year, because that's how long Devonte has left in his college career. I don't personally expect that to happen. I think Devonte Brown is likely going to end up at Florida State. They're the one school that's gotten him on campus so far, and I think they've done a great job. I think this visit, went really well for him and for FSU. For Damari, I think the recruitment's a little bit different because obviously it's more fleshed out. He's had been recruited by FSU for a few years now, whereas Devonte Brown is making a decision within this truncated portal window. He entered last week and has already taken his visit and probably isn't far off from a decision, whereas Damari Brown has been doing at this for years. With Damari, I think Alabama, Miami, the main competition. I would actually say that Alabama's in the lead for him as of going into the weekend. I'm expected to get more info on that later this week, but it's a recruitment that FSU is certainly not out of. They're still working it, but there's definitely some challenges, that they have to face to possibly land Damari Brown. But as far as Devonte, I would project him to end up at FSU as of right now.
We'll stay with the DBs, and I'll let you roll with a couple. Conrad Hussey, Penn State commit, and Edwin Joseph, both on campus as well. Do you think Florida State does enough to get a flip there with one? And then how do you feel about Edwin, also down there in the South Florida area?
Yeah, I think FSU sits in a great spot for both. There's one prospect over the weekend that I feel the best about. It's probably best about for FSU. I think it's probably Edwin Joseph. He's a guy that's been long targeted by this staff. Kind of became a bigger target during the season for them, and for a lot of schools actually. He's kind of a late bloomer. Got a lot of late offers from some bigger time schools. Auburn, Louisville, South Carolina, and Miami were all kind of involved in his recruitment over the past couple months. But I think FSU sits in a really good spot. They get his last official visit because he will not be taking an official visit next weekend, as his Chaminade Madonna team is an all-time great team in South Florida right now with the numbers they're putting up. They just won the state title in Tallahassee on Thursday, this past Thursday, and then he took the official visit over the weekend. He's set to play in a national championship game over in Las Vegas this coming Saturday against Bishop Gorman over there. So that'll be a big game, but that'll prevent him from taking another official visit to possibly Auburn or Louisville. He's taken all 5 already, but the NCAA allows, new head coaches to get kids on campus again that have previously officially visited before they got there, which is the case for Edwin Joseph at both Auburn and Louisville. So technically, Hugh Freeze or Jeff Brom could bring him back on campus this weekend if they wanted to, but that won't be the case because of the aforementioned national championship game. So, FSU gets the last crack at it. I think he has his mind pretty much made up, and I think that's on FSU if I'm reading it right. Crazier things have happened, as we know, but I think FSU sits in a really good spot for Edwin. Moving over to Hussey, I think FSU made a sneaky, really good move in this recruitment. I reported, earlier on Noles 24/7 today that I think FSU really, really made a move here. He's committed to Penn State. He's been committed to Penn State since like April, I believe. Made it a summer unofficial visit to FSU. Was supposed to be a little under the radar, but I kind of found out about it and reported on it. Whatever. That was back then. People, I kept including Conrad Hussey on my top 10 most wanted list over the past couple months. And people are like, he's not visiting. Like, why is he still on here? And this past one was kind of brutal because I had to put it up before I could report that he was visiting. I had to wait until he was on campus to report it. That was the surprise visitor that we reported on Friday. Yep. So I kind of had to tell people to trust me. But yeah, just trust me. I think FSU sits in a really good spot in this recruitment. I was told yesterday that he's got some thinking to do. He's been scratching it. I was told he's been scratching his head ever since he left Tallahassee. So, we'll see. I think, this week will be pretty pivotal in that recruitment. I expect Mike Norvell to go in home with Hussey this week, along with probably Penn State's coaches. Miami's another school that's been rumored to be involved, been reported that involved in his recruitment. I asked about them yesterday, according to, a source close to that recruitment. And, I don't expect them right now to be a factor, but we'll see. He has an open weekend this weekend to possibly take an official visit somewhere else, and that could be Miami. But I checked yesterday, and that had not been, locked in as of Sunday evening. So, we'll see. But I really do think that FSU has a really good shot to flip Conrad Hussey down the stretch.
Speaking of flip, could they flip a linebacker from UVA? How do you feel about Kamren Robinson?
No, they definitely could. I reported in a recruiting scoop this morning on Noles 24/7 that I believe Robinson's parents are both on board with him being in Tallahassee, and that was expressed multiple times over the weekend. It's just up to Robinson as to whether he wants to stay in state at UVA or go out of state to Florida State. South Carolina is another school that is of note that is supposed to host him this coming weekend for an official visit. Something he told us, in his post-visit interview on early Sunday. So we'll see. I was told that visit might not even happen, but as of right now, it's planned to happen. But I think FSU, made a huge impression. Randy Shannon, Mike Norvell both spent a bunch of time around Cam. Guy that they definitely want to add to this class. He's not a fringe guy for them. He's absolutely a take, and they want to add him as a linebacker. The third linebacker in their 2023 recruiting class with Blake Nicholson and DeMarco Ward already committed.
All right, we saved a big one for last. Reuben Bain was on campus this weekend, and everyone has said, not breaking anything here, that this has always felt like it was Miami's to lose or Miami led. Was supposed to, or maybe still is, decide this week, but then there was some talk about him maybe pushing that back to, what was it, the Under Armour game, right? Which would be right around, is that right around signing day, or what's the situation with maybe moving that back? A Miami visit coming up, is moving the date a good thing for FSU? What are your thoughts around that recruitment?
Yeah, it's an interesting recruitment. I wouldn't. Right now, I'm kind of leaning Miami. I just think that's how this little last timeline of his recruitment's trending, right? So if he goes through with the plan, like you said, his previous plan was to announce his decision on Friday at his state title game right around 7 p.m. He was going to announce then. He has a planned official visit to Miami to go the next day to go spend time with Coach Cristobal and that staff. So it'd be really weird for him to commit to Florida State and then go immediately take an official to Miami the next day. So that's just what makes me think that maybe this one's a little bit predetermined. But that doesn't mean that FSU is not trying their best to try and maybe change his mind. I'm not sure that he's completely locked in with Miami. I think Coach AB reported yesterday on our OTB that maybe he was a silent commit to Miami. I haven't heard that specifically. Maybe that's true, but I haven't heard it. Within the people I speak to, guy that FSU still thinks they have an outside shot at, not someone that they're super confident that they land, but a guy that I think FSU did a pretty good job with over the official visit weekend. They have guys from his high school that have had success. Obviously, Dalvin Cook. Just a bunch of guys throughout the years, and currently on the roster, Tatum Bethune, Murray Smith, both guys from Miami Central High School. That's where Reuben Bain attends. A guy like Patrick Payton is from the city of Miami and is the ACC Defensive Rookie of the Year. So a lot of proof of concept. It'll just depend on whether Bain wants to stay home or move a couple hours away from home in Tallahassee. I think that's the kind of the deciding factor. He laid that out in our interview on Sunday morning. We'll see. I'm not super confident in FSU's chances here. I mean, his nickname is Rueben Hurricane Bain. So obviously, if he went to FSU, that likely would not be a nickname that FSU would call him by. But hey, crazier things have happened, like I said. So we'll see what FSU is able to do down the stretch. They already have a pretty solid defensive line class at both, defensive end and defensive tackle set up this year. He's obviously a guy they'd love to add. Don't get me wrong. He's not just an option for them. He's a huge priority, but they'd be fine without him as far as what they already have in their 2023 class.
Crazy weekend last weekend as far as visits go. We'll see what some of the fallout from that is. Hopefully mostly positive, but another big one coming up this week. Tell people how they can follow along and read your work and get all the scoop of what's coming up this next weekend.
Yeah, make sure you're locked into Noles247.com. We've got a bunch of scoops. Like I'm already, I think we put out something this morning already. So you're going to want to be on there. A lot of in-home visits, important in-home visits happening this week. A lot of official visits getting set up for this coming weekend, which in quantity wise is supposed to be bigger than this past weekend. Albeit that a lot of those guys are FSU commitments already, right? Like Hakeem Williams, Keith Sampson, a couple other guys are expected in this weekend for official visits. All the FSU commits that did not use their officials, during the season or over the summer are expected in for this last weekend. And then they're going to have some uncommitted guys as well. I expect some transfer portal guys on campus, including Colorado offensive lineman Casey Roddick, which we reported late last week. And then some guys at the high school ranks. Chris Otto is currently on the list. JUCO offensive lineman, the number one interior offensive lineman in the JUCO ranks, Keyshawn Blackstock, expected to be on campus. So a lot of talent. Make sure you're locked into Noles247.com because we're going to have all the scoop all week on who's expected and what late pushes FSU is making on the recruiting trail.
Cool. Good stuff. Well, Zach, we appreciate you for hanging out, man. We'll talk to you again, I'm sure, soon, and try and get some rest before this weekend.
Thanks, TJ.
Thanks, bud. Appreciate Zach for coming on. Appreciate him for chatting with us. Make sure you like, subscribe, and comment on the video. We will be back with more content maybe today. Thanks for tuning in. Go Noles.